What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Brinson. I'm your host, live from the sweet, sweet city of Louisville, Kentucky. Here at the shout out to the AC Hotel down in Nulu. Joining me to break down Week 11, Ryan Wilson and John Breech. I'm sure, gentlemen, there'll be no gloating whatsoever. Breech actually tried, you missed it, Wilson, before you logged on. Breech tried to hang orange Christmas lights on that little Christmas tree behind him, but he couldn't make it work.
Beginning to look a lot like Christmas. That's where I put my Christmas tree up, Wilson, because Santa just delivered his first present of the season, and it was a checkers board. So, maybe I'll play you sometime.
I'll tell you what, it better be like a little travel checkers board, because that little ass tree, that thing looks like it's probably a little bit taller than you, and that's it. That's a tiny tree you got back there, man.
It looks barren. It's a sad little tree. But you know what? The Bengals did beat the Steelers. We'll get to that game. Of course, a lot to unpack from Week 11. Shout out to my new friend and new subscriber to the podcast, the bartender here at the AC Marriott.
He probably knows you better than we do.
I think we know each other pretty well. Also, shout out to Ryan Wilson.
You know that bartender was like, "Give me a shout out, and I'll give you some free drinks." And Brinson's like, "Okay, done. How many times do you want me to shout you out?"
Okay. He said 7. We'll see. Also, shout out to Ryan Wilson, decked out head to toe right now in USA soccer gear. This is not a soccer podcast, of course. It's about real football, but we are all rooting for America. 2:00 tomorrow, Monday afternoon. Wilson, what's your official prognostication of USA soccer's chances in the World Cup?
My 10-second take on the U.S. men's soccer team is that not a huge fan of the coach. He is the Matt Canada of soccer coaches, but I love the players, and I want them to have success. And I don't know what that means in terms of getting out of the group. It's going to be a tough group, but I can't wait. Like old Bart Scott says, Breech, can't wait.
And my 10-second take is only 3 seconds. USA wins tomorrow 2-1. On Monday.
I love it. My 10-second take is I would fly to Pittsburgh right now, pick up Matt Canada, and drive him back to Raleigh to let him replace Tim Beck. That's how bad things have gotten in NC State. That's how terrible our football team is, that I want Matt Canada back in Raleigh. Let's talk football instead, because no one gives a crap. Go Tar Heels.
There it is.
I hate everything. Actually, if there's Chargers Chiefs, thrilling game on Sunday night. The Chargers tried to charger. The Chiefs tried to give it right back to them. And then even though the Chargers went down and took the lead late in this game, Justin Herbert hit Josh Palmer for his second touchdown catch, I believe, on a 10-play, 64-yard, 5-minute drive to go up with 1 minute and 50 seconds left. And as the world knows, that's just too much time for Patrick Mahomes. And I mean, man, look, again, I get it I feel for Chargers fans. I did this little Charlie Brown routine of picking the Chargers to be good every year for like 7 years when I started at CBS. Finally gave up. People now, because Herbert's awesome, people want to be in on the Chargers. And it's just not going to happen. It's never going to happen. Not as long as Patrick Mahomes is in this division, right? I mean, Mahomes marched on the field, they score, they win, and it would feel very, very depressing to be a Chargers fan right now.
Well, I don't think I think it will happen. I think Justin Herbert's awesome. And I know
he is.
People in that building think he's as good as Patrick Mahomes. And at times he flashes that. The difference is that when Patrick Mahomes doesn't have his playmakers, it matters exactly zero. And we saw the Chargers struggle with a ton of injuries, both along the offensive line and then with their skill position players, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Mike Williams came back tonight for a handful of plays, made that great catch along the sidelines, re-injured his ankle. He was done. Keenan Allen had a fumble. After that, he had that huge 3rd and 18 conversion that looked like it was going to set up the game-winning score. So I just feel like if this team was playing in another city, they wouldn't have they're sort of to keep the
stigma.
To keep the football analogy going, they're basically Tottenham. They're the Tottenham of the NFL. they find ways to charger at the worst possible moments. And Breech, I guess the question for you is, how many seconds can you leave Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce? Is it north of 0?
Well, here's the question I have for not me, but Brandon Staley is, look, your defense clearly cannot stop anything that Patrick Mahomes is doing. So, Mr. Always go for it on fourth down. How do you not go for it on 4th and inches in the second half? That happened with 5 minutes left in the third quarter, literally 4th and inches. The Chargers were at their own 34-yard line. It was one of those situations. It's just inches. And you cannot give the ball back to Patrick Mahomes. Because what the Chargers ended up doing, they ended up punting. What happened? Mahomes drove down and got a touchdown anyway. So 86 yards, 34 yards. It doesn't matter when you give him the ball. He's going to score. So the best way to beat him is to not give him the ball. And when you have an opportunity to gain 3 inches and get a first down, you have to take it. And, Ryan, we've talked about that multiple times this season, is who kidnapped Brandon Staley, the guy who goes for it on fourth down, because that guy is not around this season. Last year's Brandon Staley, he goes for it in that situation. I really thought that ended up being the difference in the game because we all knew the Chargers weren't going to stop Mahomes. I don't think anyone on earth would have bet against Patrick Mahomes when he got the ball back, even though he needed a touchdown. It wasn't even like he needed a field goal. Had to get a touchdown, and I'm sure we were all watching thinking this is easy. But nope. I thought that was the beginning of the Chargers' downfall, was that decision.
It's funny, Bree.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to follow up on the 4th and inches there. So the Chargers were up 20-16, and I put on my Encyclopedia Brown, what's that Sherlock Holmes hat called, where there's a bill in the front and the back? I put that thing on and said, this doesn't make sense because we've been talking about the whole entire year. But I found something interesting, Breech, and we'll see. I'm going to test your special teams knowledge and just see how really.
I think you're actually doing a Columbo bit right now, but go for it.
Columbo, fun fact, only had one
more question, Mr. Breech.
I actually watched Columbo. I've been accused of
That
that.
was great.
Breech, who was the punter for the Chargers last year?
You know what? I know who it is because I covered him when he was in high school in Atlanta.
Ty Long.
Ty Long.
One of the worst punters in terms of hang time and distance last year in the NFL. I thought, maybe that explains some of the decisions to go for it on fourth down. Who's the punter this year?
Somebody who's even better.
J.K. Scott.
J.K. Scott.
I love how you're the kid.
Just waiting for Wilson to say it.
You're the kid in school that you hear the first word and you answer the question like you know it. You're basically Brinson in third grade.
Hey, Mr. Brinson, what's 3 + 6? 9.
That's Breech. So J.K. Scott, he had a hang time on a punt. Actually, the punt on that 4th and inches, the subsequent play, 5.1 seconds, which I learned, and you know this, Breech, is insane. Like that is
right.
the far end of the bell curve in terms of unlikely to happen. And he does that consistently. He hit a 51-yarder on that punt too, I believe. 52-yarder, excuse me. So it switched the field position. To your point, it didn't matter. But I wonder if upgrading the punt position to such a degree maybe has something to do with it. Turns out the Chargers also suck at running the ball. Now, 4th and inches, you just sneak it with Justin Herbert. There's no excuse there. But in general, I just wanted to ask you, generally speaking, if you have a guy that has 5-second hang time and he kicks it 50 yards, does that affect your decision to go for it on these fourth downs, excuse me?
Not if I only need 3 inches.
Yeah. Okay.
If it's fourth and a full yard or 2 yards, maybe, but not when I just need inches.
All right.
I think the Brandon Staley thing is 100% him going for it so aggressively last year. The Chargers not making the playoffs, the overtime game, obviously they could have easily made it. And the criticism that ensued, and I think Tom Telesco and maybe ownership, maybe the Spanish family jumped in on this too. And like, listen, Brandon, we love how aggressive you are. That's why we wanted to hire you, but you have to dial it back a little bit. And so he's sort of in his own head on this. The interesting thing here is that when I say the Chargers can't win ever, if Brandon Staley misses the playoffs, I mean, based on what Pete Prisco has said the last few weeks, if it sounds like Pete Prisco believes that like Sean Payton wants the Chargers job. And if he wants that job, they're going to fire Brandon Staley and hire Sean Payton. Like that is, I mean, and if you don't do it, you're an idiot for not doing it, right?
Yeah, I like Brandon Staley. So
I do too, but Sean Payton, man. Sean Payton, Justin Herbert.
If the Chargers miss the playoffs, I think that the Spanos family has to at least think about it. And you know what? Some other head coach who gets hired during the offseason can go say, I'm going to hire Nathaniel Hackett and Brandon Staley to be my coordinators because they're really good at that. And then I'm going to look like a genius because I just hired these two of the best coordinators available.
Maybe Sean Payton can do that. I don't know.
Also, just quickly,
it feels like the Chargers are just right there, and they just can't. They can't turn the corner, and it feels like it's been like that way for a decade.
Ben Bott, Ben Baldwin, his 4th down bot, said go for it strong on that 4th and inches that Breach mentioned too. It increases your winning percentage by 4.1%. So I guess if old Brandon Staley had a time machine, he would in fact go for it.
All right. Do you guys want to linger on this game?
The only other thing I'll say, and we'll circle back to this in the Bills game, but the Bills are probably kicking themselves like up and down whatever the main street is in Buffalo, because they lose to the Vikings last week in that terrible way. They lose the week before to the terrible Jets team, it turns out. And now the Chiefs are atop the division, or the conference, excuse me. And it appears to be clear sailing. Breach, you probably know this, but I think Joe Musso mentioned on HQ, their strength of schedule down the stretch here is easy peasy. And oh, by the way, they've won 24 straight games in November, December, which I think is pretty good. So that's great news if you're the Chiefs. Frustrating news if you're the Bills and let those games get away from you. And also frustrating if you're the Chargers, because if you win this game that you should have won, you're only 1 game back of the Chiefs in the division. Now it's 5-5 and 8-2 or whatever it is. And it feels like that's a wrap.
To Ryan's point really quick, the Chiefs have the easiest remaining strength of schedule of any team in the NFL. They only played 2 teams over 500 over their final 5 games, and that's the Bengals and the Seahawks.
How do you get the
Also of note, the Chiefs have the 2nd highest strength of victory in the AFC in terms of current playoff teams. Actually, in terms of all teams, 3rd highest all teams. Pittsburgh is actually 2nd highest, despite being 15th in the AFC. The number 1 team, the Buffalo Bills, 2, the Chiefs, and the Bills is obviously buoyed by the Chiefs. Chiefs are 0.468. At 8-2, they could definitely be caught by Miami or Tennessee or maybe Baltimore. I mean, Buffalo could still catch them with the tiebreaker. Gosh, New England's right there too. But it feels like the way that this team is starting to play, like Mahomes.
Brinson, you should be taking a victory lap right now, because you over the past few weeks just said the Chiefs you made it clear the Chiefs were the only team you trusted, and that this team is likely the one that gets the 1 seed, and if you have to pick one team to go to the Super Bowl, it's the Chiefs.
Yeah,
I also said
walk it back.
I won't be walking that back.
Well, you're trying to talk yourself into some other teams. I'm saying just leaning on the Chiefs.
No, I'm saying looking at the standings, like there's the only teams that can be involved. The other thing too that I think is like if we're gonna be if I'm allowed to pat myself on the back since Breach opened that Pandora's box, what was my favorite bet the entire offseason and entire preseason?
That your hair plugs wouldn't fall out?
Chiefs to win the AFC West, was it?
Chiefs to win the AFC West. They were like plus 160. What a freaking joke. I mean, they are on like the rest of that division. The Chargers are fine. The Raiders and the Broncos stink. The Chiefs are gonna win that division. They might have it wrapped up they're definitely gonna have it wrapped up before Christmas.
Yeah, they're gonna have it wrapped up by Thanksgiving, which is 4 days.
Yeah, 4 days away.
Well, I mean, it's not possible to have it wrapped up before Thanksgiving, but maybe they might wrap it up by this week.
I want to say quickly before we move on, I'm not the only team that can catch the Chiefs. Tennessee Titans. I'm done sleeping on the Titans. I trust Mike Vrabel. They did it last year. They were 12-5. They could do it again. No one else. Miami hasn't been there. Baltimore looked a little shaky today. Buffalo, who knows who's going to show up? And the Bengals.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, we talked about the Titans on Thursday. They're kind of trustworthy because what they're going to do. The other team's not going to score 20, and they're going to find a way to score 3 more points to their opponent. Chicago at Atlanta. The Bears are now 3-8. The Falcons are 5-6. So this game is a little irrelevant, but it does feel important from a sort of a national standpoint in the sense that Justin Fields over the past few weeks, if I was a Bears fan over the last 3 weeks, I would feel so completely different about my team than I had over the last 3 years, because you feel like Fields is the guy and he is the answer in the quarterback position. And then the last thing you see is Justin Fields being carted off at like not even carted off the field, carted through the tunnel underneath the stadium, going back to the training room to have his shoulder looked at. We don't need to spend a lot of time on this game at all, because I don't think ultimately that it will matter that much, although Atlanta is sort of there on they're not that far out of the playoff race. But Fields, man, he's so good. He's so explosive in the run game, and they actually used his talents. And if I was a Bears fan, I would be in absolute pure panic right now that they might rush him back this season, like this week, and like something damaging might happen to his right shoulder.
Do we have an update on his injury?
I don't think so, but I mean, carted off with a shoulder injury after the game.
Yeah, but card
He
it off.
shouldn't. He shouldn't play this week.
Says you don't even know what the shoulder injury is.
He just shouldn't play.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, Safety Sam says he shouldn't play. We'll see what happens. I mean, I don't know what the injury is, so we'll see. But here's how I think about it. This is a 3-win team, as you mentioned, and the Bears have every reason to be ecstatic about Justin Fields. My team, the Steelers, are a 3-win team. Kenny Pickett. That's all I'm going to say. And I'll just say this, Breech. The Bears came into this game having lost
We'll get to Kenny Pickett.
Having lost 3 straight games by a score while still scoring 27 or more points. We can now make it 4 straight games that they've lost by scoring 27 or more points, which to me says maybe the defense is an issue. Excuse me, but
it's left shoulder apparently, but still, let's not hurt Justin Fields over a 3-win team.
Okay. I mean, he's in his second year. He needs to play. If he's healthy, I'm sure he'll play. But if he's not healthy, he shouldn't play. I agree with that. But Breech, to me, it seems like the bigger issue is the defense. And also, I think credit to Luke Getsy for figuring out how to use his quarterback after the first month of the season, when a lot of times these OCs just continue to put the square peg, round hole thing, and it never works out.
Well, it's funny that when they were playing the Falcons, the Bears offense looked like it's looked over the past few weeks, but only in the first half. And in the second half, it's like the Arthur Smith went in there like, guys, we practice against our own offense in practice every day. This is all we do is run the ball with the quarterback, and this should be very simple for you. And the defense goes out there and kind of shuts down Justin Fields, because he didn't get injured till that final drive. So he was still healthy. He said he was battling hamstring cramps. But yeah, this is definitely an issue for the Bears short term, in the sense that, hey, look, your quarterback looks awesome, but you're still not winning games. So that's kind of an indictment on the front office. And, this is a team. They trade away Robert Quinn and Roquan Smith. And so what happens?
And Khalil Mack before the season too, by the way.
But the in-season trades, if they had held on to those two guys, do they win any of these last 4 games? You're on a 4-game losing streak since you Yes, I agree. You lose to the Dolphins by 3. You lost to the Lions by 1. You lose to the Falcons by 3. You might win all 3 of those games. So they sold on the short term for a long-term future, which is fine. But when you look at those moves now, it's like, if you would have just, maybe implemented this stuff with Fields during the offseason like normal teams do, instead of week 7, instead of your Thursday to Monday break between that Commanders and Patriots game, then maybe this is a different team. So it's just weird how this has all happened. And you kind of feel for Justin Fields, because they just don't have a lot around them.
Yeah, I think it says
the good news is they have Chase Claypool.
I think he had 2 catches for 11 yards today.
This
says a couple things to me. One, it feels like it puts a lot of pressure on Eberflus and the new GM. You traded away the guys that would help you win right now, with the understanding that Quinn and Roquan probably weren't going to be back. So you get the draft capital. I get all that. But if you sort of have this sort of record next year around this time, that's a problem. And you mentioned the shoulder injury for Justin Fields. Potentially the bigger issue is the knee injury that we're going to find out about with Kyle Pitts. I was just watching the replay. That's when I made that crazy face a moment ago when Breech was talking, not just because he was saying silly stuff. It does not look great. I don't know what there haven't been any updates on it. Arthur Smith didn't have any updates when the game was over, but it's not a fun looking injury. So hopefully Kyle Pitts is okay, but if not, he will be out for some time too.
So currently the Bears are holding the 3rd overall pick in the draft. Would you still make the Chase Claypool trade?
Yeah, they need wide receivers. I mean, there's no one's
disputing
that.
Give it up 35.
Yeah. I mean, he's been there for 3 weeks. Like, is he supposed to have like 10 catches for 100 yards every week, 3 weeks into a new offense?
No, I just wouldn't trade the 35th overall pick.
I know. We know. We'll see.
Well, let's move on. Enough of this crap game.
Yeah.
Next up, the Bills cruise past the Browns. Buffalo 31, Browns 23. The 23 came via a late Donovan Peoples-Jones touchdown from Jacoby Brissett, who fought hard, I thought, played pretty good. The Bills were up early. The Browns were up early. The Bills looked pretty bad. And then actually have, started, you can see here on the graphic, if you're watching, youtube.com/pick6. Oh, by the way, we're going to give away, hit the like button, smash the like button. We have 3 and maybe 5 Paramount Plus gift cards to give away to people in the chat. You lovable chat lingerers and hanger-outers and people who like to kick it with us when we do these shows. Hit the like button. If we get to 100 likes, we weigh 3. If we get to 150 likes, we weigh 5. Get to 200. Billy will drive to your house and give you one himself, and then drive to Devo's house to get a Brinson Sucks hat and make you can have that. So smash that like button. The Bills have been running the ball very well the last 2 weeks. They lost to Minnesota, of course, last week. They won this week. Let's get back to the trust factor, Wilson. Like, I mean, I know they won. I know they kind of rolled, but it wasn't like a dominant, impressive outing. Stephon Diggs is like, there's like sideline arguments with Diggs, and I think it was Sean McDermott, like, because he hadn't been targeted once through like a quarter and a half. Then finally they get the offense rolling. It just feels like this team lacks. I don't know what it is. It's not like they lack anything. They have the talent on both sides of the ball. They have a great roster, but there's just something. It's whatever the trust factor is. I don't know why I can't totally trust the Bills. Why can I not totally trust the Bills?
Well, I think part of the concern is we have to figure out what's going on with Josh Allen. He looked a little better today. He didn't complain about the elbow, so I'm going to assume that it's fine. The other issue is they got 6 feet of snow in Buffalo. They struggled to get out of town Saturday evening to get to Detroit, and maybe that had something to do with it. I wouldn't say that Stephon and Sean were arguing. Sean was talking to Stephon, and he seemed unhappy, and you mentioned he got that catch with about 5 minutes to go in the second quarter. The first catch he had the whole game was a touchdown. I think he probably felt much better after that. But this team is not as consistent as Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and that's not breaking news. That's just the reality of playing in the AFC. And even though the Bills looked unbeatable over the first, 4 to 6 weeks of the season, maybe the fact that they beat the crap out of the Steelers doesn't mean as much as we thought it did at the time, because it turns out the Steelers are an absolutely terrible football team. But you mentioned the running game. James Cook finally got going, hit 86 rushing yards, average 7.8 yards per carry. That's the James Cook they were hoping to see when they drafted him. And I think it's just a matter of sort of getting back in form to Josh Allen before the elbow injury, because I think at the end of the day, that's sort of the difference. Now, the Bills have had injuries on defense, and they struggle to stop the run for most of the season. And Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb were actually running the ball pretty well early on. But when you look at the final line, you're like, wait, what? Because I watched this entire game. Nick Chubb had 14 carries for 19 yards. I swear to God, I thought he had more than that on the first 2 series. And Kareem Hunt had only 5 carries for 32 yards. And again, it felt like they were running the ball more. And that may have been a function of the first half. And then the changes, how the score changed in the second half when the Bills finally get up, because they were down 10-3 in the second quarter. The Browns were leading. And for me, Breech, for the Browns, it feels like this is a team that's about 4 or 5 plays away every single game. There are about 4 or 5 of those plays in this game, and they end up getting their doors blown off, even though they end up losing by only 8.
Yeah, obviously we started with the Chargers, talk about how they charger up stuff. And like the Bills are the miniature version of that, where they don't do it at the end of the game. It's just small little dumb things they do throughout the game. And you go back, you point at it, they're like, well, God, if those 3 or 4 plays would have gone the other way, maybe the Browns win this. And I really thought that happened in the second quarter. You mentioned the Browns were up 10-3. They were driving up and down the field on Buffalo's defense through the first quarter and a half. They were driving to take maybe a 13-3 lead, maybe a 17-3, depending if they got a field goal or a touchdown. They got into Buffalo territory, and then Jacoby Brissett fumbles it. And it was just all over after that. That was just like it deflated the entire team. The offense was running up and down the field, and then they just went ice cold, and Buffalo recovered it, and they were like, all right, okay, this isn't fun anymore. We're not going to let the Browns beat us. And then they put their foot on the gas and just never looked back. So it was just interesting to see how dominant the Browns were for a quarter and a half, and then that just disappeared, gone.
Yeah, I actually noted 4 plays that if they'd gone the Browns' way, they would have won that game. And these are plays that any team should be able to make. You mentioned the muff snap. I mean, that's just unacceptable. They always have success on 4th down with Jacoby Brissett running the sneak on 4th and 2. He got stuffed. Never happens. He got stuffed.
Like stuffed like backwards.
2 yards back. Yeah.
Knox. What's Knox's last name?
Dawson.
Dawson. I was like, wait, what? Yeah, Dawson Knox.
Knox and Dox.
Yeah, Dawson Knox fumbled the ball but he actually his butt had just hit the ground. That's a play 6 inches another way. They get the football back. And then finally, Harrison Bryant missed a touchdown in the back of the end zone late in the third quarter. They hit him in both hands. Was it a tough catch? Yes, but it should have been a touchdown. It was 22-10 at the time. And those are things that good teams make and win football games. And those are plays that bad teams don't make, and they lose. And those losses pile up because this happens. It feels like every single week for the Browns.
Yeah, and it feels like this season's about waste for them, right? I mean,
let me ask you this. To your point, Breech. And this is a quasi hot take. So
hot take.
It's not a hot. It's a bit of a hot take. Deshaun Watson hasn't. They traded a ton for Deshaun Watson. He hasn't played football in like 2 years. He hasn't played hadn't played a real football game in 2 years. Are we definitely sure they should trot him out for like stone cold into a regular season game that doesn't mean anything versus just saying, you know what, this season's kind of a waste. We're gonna play Jacoby Brissett, and hey, Deshaun, we'll start over in the offseason. Like, is that a crazy take?
The one thing I will say to that, so if you throw him, if you're basically out of the playoff race by the time he's back.
What if he tears his ACL in the final 4 weeks of the season?
Well, right. So there's you have to weigh the factors. You say, well, he hasn't played in 2 years. So if we're throwing him in a situation where there's no pressure, then he gets warmed, reacclimated to the game, starts playing well. That's what you want. But if you were to get injured in those final few weeks where he's on the field, then you just look absolutely silly. So definitely, you're throwing him out there for garbage time as far as the season goes if you're hopelessly out of it. But I think you have to put him on the field because you gave up everything to get him, and you want to know what he can do since he hasn't played in 2 years, like you just said. Yeah,
PR-wise, you have to put him out there.
The PR would be great. Going to Houston, back to Houston next week.
I'm not a mathematician, but if he doesn't play at all this year, that means he hasn't played 3 years, which that doesn't make any sense at all. And if he gets injured, unless like one of his limbs fall off, he'll be ready to go by next September. So he's torn his ACL twice. They knew that when they traded for him. I mean, you can't say you might get hurt again. I can't play you. So I think, if you want him to get some reps, some in-game reps, he played a couple snaps in the preseason. I don't think that's going to matter one way or another when he comes back after an otherwise 2 year layoff. So I think you play him. Doesn't. And here's the thing. It's like garbage time in a sense because they're out of it, but the starters will still be playing. It's not like there's a bunch of fourth stringers out there and he's just getting crushed.
Sure.
Like he's, Zach Wilson back there.
It wouldn't. I'm not saying they should definitely do it. I'm just saying it's like I would at least think about it. Where if he goes and plays, because if you tear your ACL in like week 16, you're not definitely starting week 1.
No, but I mean, what's the point of giving up all that stuff for him and then have him sit on the bench? I mean, that doesn't add up.
Well, if you brought him in, you traded for him to get you the playoffs, but if you can't get to the playoffs, then why risk it? Like, I understand the argument. I agree with you, Wilson, that you absolutely have to play him, but I understand the other side of the argument.
Then why not just push for a year suspension? And that way you don't have to worry about it. I'm not kidding. If you're the Browns, just say, all right, suspend him for a year.
Sure. And then it leaks out. Browns pushing for longer Watson suspension.
I'm not suggesting. It was just sort of I said it was a hot take. It wasn't even a hot take. It was just a thought. All right. Moving on. Hot thought.
All right,
somehow this is what our producer Billy, noted Eagles fan, hater of all things Dallas, New York Giants, and Washington Commanders. He said, "Put some damn respect on the Commanders' name," and I don't think he's wrong. The Washington Commanders dispatched a terrible 1-8-1 Houston team, 23-10. They moved to 6-5. Taylor Heineke not amazing, but just good enough to win. Washington defense picked up Davis Mills twice. Completely, Dameon Pierce averaged 0.8 yards per carry. That's like my college GPA. Like that's how bad that is. Washington ran the ball pretty well. Terry McLaurin had some plays. I mean, as of right now, Washington is 6-5 and knocking on the door of the NFC playoffs, while another team in the division, the Giants, sort of looks a little faltery this week. Should we put some damn respect on the Commander's name, Wilson?
I'm happy for Taylor Heineke. I'm glad that they're winning football games. I like Ron Rivera. Dan Snyder sucks, but whatever. Hopefully he sells the team. They've won, 5 of the last 6. Those wins have come at Chicago, Green Bay, at Indy, right before Frank Reich got canned, I believe. They lost to Minnesota.
This is basically since Carson Wentz disappeared.
Yep, Minnesota, and then at Philly, in a game we will all remember until our dying breath, how awesome that was on Monday night. And then, of course, they just beat a terrible Houston team. So, yeah, look, man, you can only play the teams on your schedule. Heineke has been a shot in the arm. He's basically, as Brinson, either you or Breech said last week, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and you're going to get some magic and then get some tragic, and we see that too. Mike Clay of ESPN tweeted out after the game, 6 games with Carson Wentz. Terry McLaurin had 36 targets, which is 16% of the total targets. 5 games with Taylor Heineke, he has 44 targets, which is 32% of the targets. So clearly, and we were saying this all August, how much better is Wentz going to be than Heineke? Turns out the answer is 0. Ron Rivera also said,
would you like to, since the Seahawks are on bye, would you like to point out that your Carson Wentz is worse than Geno Smith take is like the most accurate
red hot
that's ever been said in the history of this podcast?
That's why Debo left. He didn't leave this podcast because of you. He left because he didn't want to face that take. And I understand it. By the way, Breech, Ron Rivera said this is Heineke's job the rest of the way out.
And it should be. But, it's not like he's the reason they're winning, but he's not making them lose. Whereas Carson Wentz just makes those back-breaking turnovers, and it's just like, oh, my God, what are they doing? Heineke just plays smart football. Doesn't mean it's necessarily good football, but he gives you the best chance to win. And that's all this team needs because their defense is so good. Over the past 6 weeks, they've surrendered 15.8 points per game. And if you're giving up under 16 points, you can win a lot of games unless you're the Broncos.
Or Matt Rule's Panthers.
or Matt Rule's Panthers. But it's funny. The Texans are so bad that Davis Mills threw a pick 6 on like the 3rd play from scrimmage for Houston. And it was Ryan has his notebook. I wrote down my notebook, game over, even though there was only 2 minutes into the first quarter because there was no way Houston was going to do anything against the Commanders. And so, you look at this team and it does feel like, Prince, I think you're right that maybe they're going to get that if the NFC East gets 3 playoff spots, if the Commanders get that 3rd spot, not the Giants, because it's not just that they've won 2 in a row, 5 of their past 6, but the games they've lost, they lost to the Titans. They were leading that game in the second half, lost by 4. They lost to the Vikings. They were up by 10 with like 10 minutes left and somehow managed to blow that lead. So they've been hanging with the good teams. It's not like they've just been beating up on bad teams because we've seen them beat the Bears and the Colts and the Texans and obviously a good team in the Eagles. So yeah, I feel like this team is absolutely for real. It's just going to depend on how well Heineke plays, but I want to see him get more Jordans. So I'm going to keep cheering for them.
Or what? Jordans. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, worth noting that I believe that this run, they're 4-1 with Heineke at quarterback, 4-0-1 against the spread, which is very impressive. It's come since Ron Rivera had that sort of expletive-laden post-game press conference. And maybe most importantly, Carson Wentz coming into this week was at 68.7% of the snaps played for the Washington Commanders. If he plays 70% of the snaps, the 2023 third-round pick that Washington gave up to Indy becomes a second-round pick. If he plays less than 70% of the snaps, it's a third-round pick. That has to be front and center in the minds of this front office and this coaching staff when they say, we're winning with one guy, we're not winning with the other guy. No way in hell are we playing Carson Wentz and giving up a second-round pick. Like, if you lose out, and, you lose 6-5, and you go, you lose 3 of the next 5 or whatever it is, and all of a sudden you've given up a second-round pick. Much like I wouldn't play him. I wouldn't play Wentz either. I would put Wentz on IR, frankly.
If Wentz was making minimum wage, I would not play him. It doesn't matter. Like it just makes it. There's no reason to put him out there. And the frustrating thing for me, I feel bad for Carson Wentz legitimately. The thing for me is, why do teams keep trading for this guy when he, as Denny Green told us before the podcast, he's exactly who he thought he was? And that's, again, I'm not trying to crap all over Carson Wentz. He's just not an NFL starting quarterback over a 17-game season, and that's just the reality of it. Speaking of starting quarterbacks, the Houston Texans have the first overall pick. It almost feels like a lock because they, in terms of teams that are behind them, the Panthers and the Bears, they ain't catching them. Are you taking a quarterback?
Yes. Who would you take?
I would take Bryce Young in a heartbeat. And then I would use my next first-round pick, which they got from the Browns, as it turns out, on an offensive lineman. And then Go from there because you need a quarterback. Bryce Young is tiny. Talk to people at Alabama that say he's 5'10", 185. So he's basically 2 inches shorter than Breech. Did I tell you this not so fun fact about quarterbacks who are that size that have been drafted in the last 20 years? Did I mention that to you guys?
They're probably not good, right?
So
it's like Russell and
no, so that are around 5'10" to 6 feet and 185 to 195.
My size basically.
Yeah, your size when you're dreaming when you comb your hair up like Chevy Chase did in Fletch with the afro. So here's the deal. So between 68 and 72 inches, which is 5'8" and 6 feet, I believe, and then 180 and 200 pounds. Since 2000, these are the players that have been drafted, those heights and weights. Russ was over that. Russ was like 205 or something, so he doesn't count.
Russ is thicker. That's right.
Kyler was actually weighed more than Russ somehow. He was 207 at the combine. Here are the names: Seneca Wallace, 4th round pick; Joe Hamilton, 7th round pick. That's it. No one else. So he's going to be precedent setting. Bryce Young is, but he's good. I would take him number 1 overall. By the
way, first of all, I'm 5'9" in
heels. Yes, go ahead.
I'm just saying, like, I wouldn't want to take someone slightly taller and slightly more athletic, or a lot more athletic than me.
Breech, is Brinson 5'9"?
Yes,
he's taller than me.
I mean, what do you have, like 5'5"? What's wrong with you? How tall are you?
Personally, I wouldn't take this level of disrespect.
How tall are you?
5'10"
and a half.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Used to be 3/4, but I'm shrinking. That's a true story.
I would like to point out that the Houston Texans had 5 yards of total offense in the first half.
Is that good or bad?
That's
which
15.
Which means if you combine that with the Jets' yards in the second half against the Patriots, they combined
for almost 10.
7 total yards of offense. Humiliating.
And you know, one thing about the Commanders real quick is they get Chase Young back soon in the next week or two. They thought he was going to come back this week and decide to hold it off, but like they're doing all this and their defense is only going to get better.
One more thing I'll point out before we move on from this game. Currently, and I want our junior NFL draft analyst to note this.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, 4 of the top 10 picks in the 2023 NFL draft are going to be used by teams who were traded who traded for those selections. The 5th pick, Denver to Seattle; 6th pick, Rams to Detroit; 7th pick, Cleveland to Houston; and 10th pick, New Orleans to Philly. Maybe stop trading your first-round picks, guys.
Well, here's what makes it worse. I mean, what was the Rams? Was that the Jalen Ramsey?
That's a Stafford. That's a Stafford deal. So they they won a Super Bowl. That's like, you won a Super Bowl, you deal with it.
Yeah, that's fine. So 3 of these picks are for quarterbacks: Russ Wilson, Matthew Stafford, and then Deshaun Watson. The 10th pick, which the Saints gave up to the Eagles, that's for Trevor Penning, an offensive tackle who's been injured this year. So
to get another pick from last year to move up in like a draft that everyone agreed you didn't want to move up in.
So yeah, that's interesting. But yeah.
Great. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll do the thing where Billy jumps on, talks about the Eagles.
He ain't gonna show up.
And then Breech will dunk all over Wilson about the Bengals throttling the Steelers. Next. All right, Billy.
Take your medicine.
Come get your Tylenol, son.
Oh, don't try to wear your smart glasses like you're going to be intelligent.
No, so when you wear the blue light glasses, it was the reflections show up in a bad way.
I know, I hate it.
It hides
the
tears. No, leave it on. It hides the tears.
I have no tears. We won today. My team won today, Wilson. I don't know about you.
All right, explain it away. That was ugly.
Dude, do you feel good or bad about that Eagles victory? Because I think there's both things you can take from that. One, you'd be thrilled that Jalen Hurts continues. But by the way, first of all, I would like to personally thank Jalen Hurts as someone who made a bajillion Jeff Saturday jokes. We cannot have this guy go like 8-0 and make the playoffs. We just can't do it.
I mean, I agree. I think I have conflicting feelings. I feel as though it was great to see Jalen Hurts have a comeback win, which I think is very influential in his growth. But it was very concerning to see how stagnant the offense looked. I mean, I think a lot of the drives got stagnated because of penalties and things of that nature. But the defense saved us today. And I think that Sue and Joseph were solid pickups today, helped in stopping the run. Jonathan Taylor was kept under 100 yards rushing, which I think was pretty big. And he had 22 carries at least. So I think defensively we kind of found our rhythm a little bit, but offensively we took a step back. But we did lose Dallas Goedert, and that's a big loss for us. So I think we're still trying to figure out what our offense looks like without that piece there.
Hey, Wilson.
Yes.
Billy and I talked about this before you guys jumped on. I was the first one on the podcast stream. I don't know if you noticed that. Did y'all notice after the game? I don't know if you guys saw this or not. In Louisville, because Indy and Nashville are close. I got the Bengals game. Or excuse me, the Cincy game. Cincy and Indy are close. So I had that game and then the Bengals game. I would need someone to confirm for me that Nick Sirianni and Jeff Saturday shook hands after that game. Because I mean, I don't like Nick Sirianni was sprinting it like up in the stands multiple times and screaming in the faces of, I think, Colts fans, being like, "What you want to?" Because they're talking trash about Frank Reich, and they never don't show that handshake. Did you see something otherwise, Breech?
No, I know that Nick Sirianni yelled at the crowd, and no, that's it. Which was interesting.
Throw it up there, Bill.
I just
put it in Slack.
He's easily the most likable coach in the NFL. I love Nick Sirianni.
Yeah, after the game, during his post-game press conference, Sirianni said, "I love Frank Reich. He's one of the best damn football coaches I've ever been around. You don't want to know what I think, if he should be there, be here or not. You guys can probably imagine what I really think." So, Billy, put that image, the video in. I just put
I'm putting it up there.
Oh, okay. Here he is, flapping his gums at the Colts fans after the game, peacocking around after he beat the Colts by 1 point.
I mean, he low-key does a little. He low-key does a little discount.
So watch.
Check there
See this big guy behind him too. This big guy, the big guy in the black shirt.
That's the head of the Eagle security. That's the head.
And so when they're going to the field, he was like, they were talking to each other, and like Sirianni was letting some F-bombs loose, and he was basically like, this guy was like pointing out like, here's where we're going. It felt, the whole thing was like very weird. It wasn't like it wasn't congenial at all.
I mean, I don't care that he didn't shake Jeff Saturday's hand if that's in fact what didn't happen. He doesn't have to shake his hand. Bill Belichick made a career out of not shaking people's hands.
No, but I mean, Sirianni was in Indy with Frank Reich, and like Billy and I were saying, so like, for instance, this is the example I gave Billy. It's like, if Wilson was forced to do HQ in a blindfold, and he got fired because he was wearing a blindfold and couldn't pick up on the visual cues of doing television, I would text Wilson and be like, "Yo, bro, why did they put you in a blindfold? That's messed up." He'd be like, "Yeah, I know, that's weird." It's sort of like that time that Jim Irsay made Frank Reich bench Matt Ryan for Sam Ellinger. They lost 2 games and he immediately fired him. I feel a little like I got hamstrung there. You know what I'm saying? Like, they've definitely been talking about this. And if everyone's like, Jeff Saturday won, I'd be furious if it was Frank Reich.
If I was wearing a blindfold and you texted me, how could I read the text?
Well, you might even miss your hit.
The other thing, no, I see what you're saying. I brought that up last week when Matt Ryan magically showed up on under center. But I still don't know.
By the way, you would be wearing the blindfold doing HQ, then get fired. You wouldn't keep wearing the blindfold after you got fired.
Or you wear it like a toddler where you can still see below you, so that you can read the text.
That's what I do at the pool in the summer when we do the beer bob. And it's like, you got to put on the goggles, but you have to put the tape over the goggles. You just put the tape really high, and then you can see it.
I was interested in how that ended. You did it at the pool. I thought you're staring at the old ladies or something.
No, you're diving for the beer. You're doing the beer bob.
You got to be careful with you, man.
I know, right?
Oh my God.
So, Breech, I mentioned this when Jeff Saturday got hired, and tell me what you think about my theory of maybe he is the right man for the job because he doesn't overcomplicate things. He's just a guy out there being a cheerleader and, occasionally weighing in on stuff.
It literally is like Jeff Saturday. I think I said this last week, that he just said, look, Jonathan Taylor's a bread and butter. We're going to run the ball with Jonathan Taylor. We're going to simplify things on defense. we don't need to be crazy. We don't have any superstars. Matt Ryan's not 2016 MVP Matt Ryan, who's going to go out there and throw 40 passes and win us games. We're just going to run the ball, play smart defense, and not turn the ball over. And hopefully that'll be good enough. And so far, it's been almost good enough. 1-1 and almost knocked off the best team in the NFL.
Do the second best team in the NFL? Do the Colts beat the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL? Do the Colts beat the Steelers next week?
Where's that game?
That is in Indianapolis.
Oh my God!
Ooh, on Monday night,
the wins over Wilson spread in that game is -3.5. Indianapolis. Bang the Colts.
what? Are you serious?
Bang the Colts.
Yes. Have you
All
seen
right, so
Kenny Pickett play?
How much? How hard should I bang the Colts?
$10.
Bang it right.
That's a wins over Wilson max bet, by the way.
That's right. Yeah, after,
that's like 40. That's like 100 units for Wilson.
Right. You don't go to the look. I ain't going to the $20 blackjack table. It's $5 max bets. Get out of here with that.
Wilson says put $10 on the Colts -3.5.
That is a
Steelers. That is a 100 unit whale play from Wilson.
Is that the lock sign?
That is a lock sign. So they play the Colts. Excuse me, the Steelers are at the Colts, host the Steelers. Then they're at the Cowboys, at the Vikings, Chargers at home, at the Giants, Texans at home. I think that's – could he win – could he win 3 of those games? He would definitely win 2 of those. If they win 3 of those games, you can mark it down, and I'll be revisiting it. Jeff Saturday's hired before, there's going to be something very embarrassing for the NFL, particularly for Jim Irsay, who's just shoving it through minority interviews for the Indianapolis Colts this offseason. And then they just hire Jeff Saturday. They're like, oh, that's right. We're going to interview Jim Caldwell. It's like, you fired Jim Caldwell. What are you doing? they're going to interview like David. They're going to be like 2 or 3 David Culleys.
Well, I mean, look, Irsay is crazy as a whatever crazy is, but the man, he hired Tony Dungy. He obviously had my guy that you just mentioned there, Jim Caldwell. So it's not like he doesn't have a history of hiring black guys.
You're listing a bunch of black guys that went to the Super Bowl and or won the Super Bowl that he fired. But sure, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I mean,
no, I agree with you.
Will Brinson, white person, tell me how this works. Meanwhile, I just want to mention quickly, Clarence in the comments, who's been with us way too long. I mean, this guy's in basically, he's like the, I'm trying to think. He's in the relationship where he
Stockholm Syndrome.
Yes, thank you. That's what it actually is. But he asked, can we talk about the game and not the coaching sideshow? So tell us something good, Breech and or Brinson, about the Colts. And Brinson, you're sort of touching on their ability to win some football games coming up. But anything that stuck out in this game in particular?
They almost beat the Eagles. Look, they're playing sound football. That's all you can want if you're the Colts right now. It was such, it's not like they were horrible, but that they had their offense wasn't any fun to watch. I got shut out by Jacksonville back in week 2. It was just a team that was Colts fans complain. You don't want to watch this. Jim Irsay got so fed up that he made Frank Reich bench the starting quarterback that led to Frank Reich getting fired. And so now here you are playing competitive football. And,
I thought this game, but their offensive line was not as good as it was last week. Like their offensive line had this huge leap forward in Jeff Saturday's first game. And it was like, oh, Jeff Saturday's an offensive lineman. Like he's got this offensive line cooking. It was not as good. Now, maybe that's a byproduct of the Eagles' defensive line and whatnot. But credit to the defense. I think Gus Bradley called a pretty good game and kept, except for that one play, the touchdown by Jalen Hurts, where it's like he's like, well, clearly they're not going to run Jalen Hurts again on 3rd down. It's like this is the Eagles, right? They are definitely going to try to run Jalen Hurts. And it was the drop back, the look, and then the quarterback sprint up the middle where he scored on it. Gus just left the middle completely wide open. There was also that insane combo of Jonathan Taylor runs the ball up the middle, and he's like running and he's like being tackled by 17 people, and he's still running, and they didn't blow the whistle, and they're like, and there's a fumble. It's like, well, that is a little unfortunate if you're a Colts fan. And then A.J. Brown fumbles on the very next play.
The Jonathan Taylor play was interesting because I feel like that's been a thing really this year where they've let in the scrum just kind of be pushed forward or backward, and they're not blowing the whistle when I think they used to in the past. Usually as soon as the players stop for, say, a split second, whistle blow, play dead, that's it. And now they're just letting these things, it's like the refs swallow their whistle, just, we'll just go until someone passes out or is knocked unconscious. We're not even going to worry about this. Because I was surprised the Jonathan Taylor fumble. There were like five different instances on that play where I thought they were going to blow the whistle.
Right, you're like, did we miss a whistle? Did they silent whistle? What's happening here? It's like, and they didn't stop it, and then just finally somebody gets a hand in there and pops the ball loose. It did feel a little like karmic football godsy to give the ball back to the Colts. Brandon Graham had a good game, right? I mean, I feel like he did. The Eagles pass rush was getting home, and that's sort of the hallmark to me for this Eagles team is that they are going to have to rush the passer very well. It was probably the offensive. Billy, was it the offense's worst game for the Eagles this year?
I mean, probably. I would probably say it's their worst.
For 3.5 quarters.
The irony of the whole thing is that offensively we played so bad, but we actually averaged more yards per rushing play than the Colts did. But that's the irony of the whole situation. It's like we play bad offensively, and I think like Jalen Hurts' comments after the game is that he talks about how they barely scratched the surface of like how much potential that they actually have. I think that's true because if you're able to outrun a team that's predicated solely on their running game, I feel like there's something there in that. So, I mean, yeah, it wasn't a good performance for the offense, but it was nice to see them be in a situation like that and prevail because I feel like a lot of Eagles teams in years prior would have lost that game. We haven't won a game since being down 10 plus points going into the fourth quarter since 2010 when Deshaun Jackson runs that punt return back against the New York Giants in the Meadowlands. So it was just really nice to see that Eagles team step up and win a very important game.
Dang, Billy, I had that fun fact I was about to ask you. You could have looked smart and answered it. The only thing I have concerning about the Eagles is that the last 3 games have not been Eagles like football like the previous 8 weeks. I mean, they stomped the Steelers 35-13 in week 8. Then the Texans game, that was tough sledding. The Commanders game, they obviously lost, and then the Colts game, they eked out a win on the road. So next week, Green Bay. I feel like that's a whooping coming Green Bay's way. We'll see. But again, if it's another tight game, you got to start to feel like, okay, are these the Vikings, a team that wins a bunch of one-score games, and then what happens when we get to January?
I mean, I will say that Jalen on several occasions today did not read the read option correctly, and he gave the ball far too much.
Which is weird for him.
But I will say, I think defensively they confused him a lot because they were bringing, the corner, the nickel corner down and like looping them around the defensive line. So he just felt more comfortable just giving it in those situations. But I think when they go back into the film room, they're going to have to coach him up in those situations. Like, hey, you're going to have to make somebody miss. You're going to have to make a play here. But yeah, so.
I also think too that like a lot of times and this happens it mostly happens in football because it's a smaller sample size, shorter season, not a shorter season, but like a condensed number of games. And so the Eagles start 8-0, and then they lose a game that they had no business, lose the Commanders on Monday night in prime time, and then you steal one late against the Colts, and it's like are the Eagles in trouble? It's like they're 9-1, they're fine, they're fine. Now, this is not the 2007 Patriots. It's not. They're a very good team, but they're one of the top teams. They're in our second tier of trust in an NFL season where there's so much parity that, honestly, any combination of Super Bowl teams right now. What combination of Super Bowl teams right now would, if I said it, would you be like, that's not possible? Like you have to go pretty far down the list.
Yeah.
If I said
Steelers Bears, no, not possible.
Right. That was yeah. But if I said Dallas, New England, you would think no, that's not likely, but you wouldn't rule it out.
Yeah. All right.
There's no way.
That's enough about the Eagles. Let's go.
All right. Let's get this over with. Breech.
You love my face, Ryan.
Bye, Billy. The Cincinnati, what's their team nickname? Oh,
the Zebras.
Bengals, that's right.
The Zebras is right.
No,
Scott Hansen.
Scott Hansen called them the white zebra helmets, which, frankly, I think is offensive to
if a 5-year-old
Bengals.
zebra, I get it. Not offended.
I mean, they're just the Bengals, and there's a white Bengal. The Bengals beat the Steelers 37-30. Joe Burrow looks like this has. If I'm John Breech, I'm thinking, oh, is this just what we do now? We kind of hang around the first half of the season, then Joe Burrow gets hot as hell, and we go to run and we make a little playoff push, and then all of a sudden we get Joe Burrow in the postseason, and I get to John Breech right now, Wilson, thinks that he is just going to be in the hunt for a Super Bowl for the next 10 years.
He should feel that way. Joe Burrow, it's funny.
I agree.
Some people thought Kenny Pickett was going to be some version of Joe Burrow. I never thought that, and I got confirmation again on Sunday afternoon. And look, you can say that he's a rookie and all that other crap. It doesn't matter. He's 24 years old, and Joe Burrow at no point played like this because Joe Burrow is a legit first overall pick. But I'll ask you this, Breech. Coming into this game, Joe Burrow had thrown, fifth career game against Pittsburgh. This is from our buddy Brian DeArda, who goes to a lot of the Steelers games and covers some CBS Sports. Burrow had thrown just 2 picks and 16 touchdowns since throwing 4 versus the Steelers back in week 1. Cincinnati hadn't won an AFC North game coming in this year as well. Thanks to the Steelers for fixing both those things. Do you think that the only player in the Steelers locker room that Joe Burrow is worried about is TJ Watt?
Yes. I will be honest that every week this season where it's TJ Watt will be back by November. And I would just be I will bet everything I own that he'll be back by the time they play the Bengals because that's the guy that is on the field. He destroys the Bengals all the time. He is a game wrecker when it comes to playing the Bengals. And going into this game, I only felt about 53% sure the Bengals were going to win. Usually I am highly overconfident and I assume they were going to win. And when TJ Watt had that insane interception, I mean, there's no reason a defensive lineman should be able to make the play that he made. And at that point in the game, the Bengals were up 24-20 in the third quarter. Watt intercepts it. And then the Steelers take over on the 21-yard line. And it felt like a classic Bengals-Steelers game where the Bengals are playing well enough to win. And then the wheels fall off the wagon. Something dumb happens. The Steelers score a touchdown. Game over. But the defense kept that from happening. And it is just crazy, because everyone, including us, roasted the Bengals after that loss to the Browns, after Jamar Chase went out and said, God, this team's 4-4. They can't do anything without Jamar Chase, even though they only had 4 days to figure something out when they found out he was going to go out. And it was this team is not going to do anything. And I think, Brinson, there is something to be said for it is they go to the first half of the season and everybody writes them off. And then everything just kind of clicks. And, the Steelers tried everything here. I mean, it felt like they thought they could cover the Bengals receivers and man, they tried that a couple times. And just with Jamar Chase not on the field, it was, hey, our athletes are better than these guys. And then T. Higgins just went out there and balled out. I mean, this was a great win just to get that Steelers monkey off their back, pick up that division win, pick up that conference win because their conference record is horrible as far as potential playoff tiebreakers go. But man, suck it, Wilson.
So, Breech,
Did
T. Higgins had...
Did you laugh at potential?
Yeah, he mentioned potential. T. Higgins had 9 catches, 148. All 9 of those catches were contested catches. So the thing is, the coverage, someone in the comments asked, so the Steelers going to play man for the rest of their life against Joe Burrow. They need better athletes at cornerback, but it wasn't like T. Higgins was running wide ass open. He made a ton of tough catches. And you talk about the athletes on the team. Joe Mixon left with, I think, what was a concussion, so he didn't finish the game. The second leading receiver on that team was Samaje Perine, who had 4 catches for 50 yards and 3 freaking touchdowns. I think the Steelers have 7 touchdowns all season from their wide receivers. So Perine stepped right in. He is in no way, shape, or form Joe Mixon in terms of his athleticism, but he just runs people over, and he's an asset in the passing game. And then Trent freaking Irwin had a touchdown, Breech. Again,
his first one of the season.
Not an athlete, but he got open. Again, it was a contested catch. Great catch by him. Great throw by Joe Burrow to the back of the end zone. But that's what good teams do. Meanwhile, you have Kenny Pickett throwing all sorts of craziness up there to the point where I again had the thought, man, I wouldn't mind seeing Mr. Trubisky in there. And this team's going to have a top 10 pick, and they probably won't think about it, but they should have a conversation about drafting a quarterback. They probably won't do it, and they'll stick it with Kenny Pickett because that's what teams do. they compound the issue, and then 3 years from now, we'll be wondering who's going to be replacing Kenny Pickett off the old scrap heap.
By the way, I'm pretty sure that like Samaje Perine was being taken over Alvin Kamara in 2017 dynasty drafts. Just apropos of nothing.
Yeah, because guess what? Andy Dalton's not throwing the football.
I
Need
wish
the
I
dunk.
had
Need the
dunk-
dunk
I wish
button
I
right
had-
there, Breech.
I know. I wish I had a dunk button.
I will say this though: George Pickens might be the best player in football.
He's such a stud.
Other than that, I have nothing positive to say about this.
If
team.
only he had Joe Burrow throwing him the football.
No,
Hey,
kidding.
let me Wilson, let me ask you this, and I mean, like, I don't want to get a hot take on Steelers Bengals. Just like, should I mean, like if you're Mike Tomlin, do you feel like you want to stick around?
Why would?
Like,
What are you talking about?
No, I mean, like, I'm not. He's obviously not going to get fired, but like, I saw a tweet. I think it was from like Steelers Nation on Twitter. It was like, there's 3 players that I would consider untouchable going into next year. It's like Minka Fitzpatrick, George Pickens, and somebody
TJ
else.
Watt.
TJ Watt, yes, thank you. But like Kenny Pickett's not on the list.
Why? What? Are you serious? Why would he be on that list?
They just took him in the first round, man. Like what? Like
He's not
there's a-
good. He wasn't good coming out of
you were
college.
high on Kenny Pickett 4 weeks ago.
I've never been high on Kenny Pickett. What are you talking about? He's my number 4
Fine.
quarterback coming into the draft. I thought he was a 2nd round pick. He went 20th overall. He was
Breeze.
overdrafted.
At any point in the season, has Wilson been optimistic about Kenny Pickett?
Yeah, I've been optimistic about him, but I didn't say he was good. He's a rookie that completed some passes, but he's had a tough season. And there's, like I just said a moment ago, at no point in his rookie season did he look anything like Joe Burrow ever did. And Joe Burrow struggled as a rookie at times.
No, it's night and day. It's just, yeah, I agree with that completely.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
just
I
saying,
mean,
like,
if he made a good
I
throw,
guess. All right, sorry. Let me rephrase that. Where do the Steelers go from here? I mean, like you have a turnover in the front office. You have this roster that is like
Roster's not bad.
lacking. Roster's not bad.
it's not a terrible roster. Mike Tomlin, I don't imagine he'd go anywhere. I mean, he's been there since 2007. He has one losing season. He quits. That would be quite the look. He said before the season that he sort of embraces the idea of trying to win without Ben Roethlisberger. I would imagine Bill Belichick probably said the thing about Tom Brady and probably wishes he could get a time machine and go back and keep Tom Brady. But it is what it is. Saying that doesn't
As
mean
Mike
anything.
Tomlin likes to say.
Yeah. But I think what you do is
hey, the standard is the standard.
that's right. Iron sharpens iron. If you're keeping Kenny Pickett, you use that top 10 pick on an offensive lineman, or you draft someone like Jalen Carter, defensive tackle, or you get an edge rusher like Will Anderson if those guys are available. And they're going to have 2 second-round picks because thank God Chase Young, the Bears were duped into that. So you just build around Kenny Pickett. And I think, first of all, Kenny Pickett might actually end up being Joe Burrow, but I guarantee if Matt Canada was calling plays for Joe Burrow, he would look like Kenny Pickett. That's my point. So, you got to fix that. And you can be stubborn if you want to and hang out with Matt Canada some more, and the results are not going to change. This team, there's no team on planet Earth that runs the ball more on 2nd and 10 breach anywhere on the planet, and that includes teams with quarterbacks with no arms. True story.
Is that Matt Canada's fault?
That he's calling the plays.
Bro,
What do you mean?
Matt Canada outright stinks. Like there's no one on planet Earth. Like the only person who wants Matt Canada right now is me because I want Tim Beck gone. And like that's how bad things have gotten in Raleigh. Trust me, Matt Canada stinks.
You play to win the game.
But you might be right in the sense that Breach maybe they don't trust Kenny Pickett, but that goes back to my original point. Why are you drafting a 23-year-old quarterback who needs time to learn when you could just address other positions? Roll with Mitch.
And I saw some people in the comment section talking about Zach Taylor because every week I always say, I think he's a horrible coach. I think he's a great coach. He does everything on both sides of the fence. He didn't do anything today that made me pull out my hair, which is good because it will all be gone if that keeps happening. And I will look like Wilson by the end of the season. It's going to happen, Wilson. But this, I would say, this was arguably his best coach game of the year. I just didn't see any issues with anything he did.
Required a superhuman effort from Joe Burrow in the second half to win the game. But sure, yes.
Breaking news: Zach Taylor outcoaches Matt Canada. Put that on your resume.
I really wish I had done fun right now. All right, anything else from you guys on this one?
No, that's a big win for the Bengals. I'm sure Breach feels similarly in terms of the conference win or the division win. They're back in the playoff chase. I think
especially big because they have the 3rd most difficult remaining schedule of their 7 remaining opponents. 6 of them have a winning record.
And
right
they're
now.
currently the 7th seed. So
Seventh
they're
seed, yep.
they're in the club, Breach. They're in the club.
They're in the club.
They're the 7th seed, and
So there's 6 teams ahead of them right now because they're the 7th seed. The Bengals play 5 of those 6 teams that are ahead of them over the final 7 weeks of the season.
But that's like exactly what happened last year too. Where it's like the Bengals are dead. They got to play the Chiefs, and it's Joe Burrow just does Joe Burrow stuff. I'm not sleeping on that team. I would be intrigued by the Bengals Super Bowl futures right now.
Ooh.
Don't fall for it, Breach. He's just setting you up, Charlie
I
Brown.
brainwashed him. He's an hour and a half away from Cincinnati.
Do you remember crying outside of SoFi Stadium?
Do I remember what?
I asked Breach if you remember.
Breach, crawling out of SoFi Stadium with your tears dripping down your face.
Don't fall for it. All right, what's next?
All right, next up, Jets and the Patriots playing a game of football.
Oh my God! Let's talk about all the touchdowns in the game. Okay, conversation's over.
There's only one of them.
I can't wait to hear this hot take. I'm going to try. Let me take some deep breaths and meditate. Go ahead. Say whatever you're going to say, Brinson.
There's no hot take. It was 3-3 with like 10 seconds.
No, the Marcus Jones touchdown return.
No. We're not going to do the block. We're not going to do the argument about the block.
Oh, good.
It's fine.
Thank you.
We're not going to do that.
Warm down, Breach. He didn't want that heat.
No. It's too late in the podcast. It'll waste 10 minutes of time, and I'll get yelled at for it in Slack tomorrow. Instead, we're just talking about the fact that Marcus Jones housed him. First of all, you don't let a guy return a kick with that amount of time left. You just don't do it. It's way more likely that the kick return goes to the house if you give the guy the kick option, the return option, versus asking Mac Jones to go, 80 yards or 75 yards? Or I guess 35, 40 yards, whatever it is, in the span of 10 seconds. Like, what were they thinking letting Marcus Jones return the ball? An electric play, like in a thrilling play. And, of course, at RJ White 1, at Prisco CBS, a revenge game play, baby.
I say it every. Congratulations on that. That is you own the revenge game space, no doubt about it. I say it just about every week. The Patriots crushed that draft last year. Marcus Jones, Jack Jones. I'm trying to think who else they get. Oh, Tyquan Thornton's been hurt, so we'll see how that works out. Cole Strange has been great. So Marcus Jones was, I think I probably mentioned this all the time. He's like 5'9", 5'10". If he were 6'1", he'd have been a first-round pick. But obviously, he adds returnability. He played some wide receiver at Houston. He's a really good slot cornerback. He can play outside. So, again, that's the difference. So, Billy, you got that Zach Wilson clip? Is that ready to go? So, Zach Wilson was asked after the game if this was his fault, the way the offense played, scored 3 points.
This is so bad. I can recreate it. He said no.
He said no. You got that, Billy? Oh, what are you gonna do, Billy? What are you gonna do?
Billy's making Wilson look like a fool.
Well, Brinson just
like the Bengals made the Steelers look like fools. Okay, you know what though?
Oh, no.
As an offense, though, I mean, when you guys are only able to score 3 points, the defense only lets up 3 points. I mean, do you feel like you let the defense down at all?
No.
I mean, and Billy, I'm sorry for putting you on the spot.
No, you get Billy like 8.5 seconds to get that thing up before.
No, I mean, he did a good job. It's hard to do. I get it. I mean, I appreciate him getting up there, but I think that the takeaway
certainly look, Zach Wilson threw for 77 passing yards. He was a leading rusher, 26 rushing yards. They had 3 total yards of offense in the second half. I think the Jets and the Giants are the Cinderella stories of the season. And here's a hot take. Neither of them make the playoffs.
Hey, Breach, how far do you think, what's the farthest in the second half that the Jets offense got?
Well, I know they only got 2 yards the entire half. So I will say they did not even cross their own 40-yard line.
35.
That's even worse.
So, and what would you think as a team?
Have you seen this drive chart? It is amazing. Just real quick. Punt, field goal, punt, end of half, punt, end of game.
So, yeah, not great. So, Breach, what would you think as a fan of a team that's sucked forever, if your quarterback came out and said, no, it's not my fault that I threw for 4 yards and ran for 6 yards and our team lost because we only scored 3 points?
I mean, if I am somebody who was on the Jets defense or a Jets receiver or on the Jets offensive coaching staff or anyone in the Jets organization, I am not thrilled to hear my quarterback say that after the game. You just got to learn to take responsibility. It's that easy. You know, Tom Brady, the successful quarterbacks, the buck stops here. It's one of those things where, yes, it was my fault, or I could have played better. You don't have to say it was your fault. Just say, I could have played better. We could have done more.
We needed to do more.
Don't you put that evil on me.
You don't throw your receivers under the bus. But, the other part of this is, despite how badly he played, and because we just talked about, Zach Taylor and sometimes how he makes crazy coaching decisions, you can still 100% put this on Robert Saleh for not telling the punter to punt the ball out of bounds. It is literally that simple. It is a no-brain decision in this situation. You do not let the returner touch the ball with under 20 seconds left to play, because you kick it out of bounds. The Patriots have time for one play, maybe get in field goal range. Oh, what? You're going to let a kicker who's already missed 2 field goals try a field goal? Great. We're not scared. We're just going to get ready for overtime. So it was just mind-blowing.
Belichick's probably taking a knee and going to overtime.
Thomas,
He might,
go ahead.
I would say he might attempt one throw. He didn't want to let, but the flip side is, with 20 seconds left, you don't want to let Mac Jones make a mistake, and all of a sudden the Jets are in field goal range. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, I agree with you completely. Like, you do not let them return that football. You kick it out of bounds and make the Patriots make a decision.
Thomas Scott in the comments says Zach Wilson plays like a kid who had one good year at BYU, and truer words have never been spoken. Another thing, Breech, you mentioned that wide receivers may not be happy with the words that left Zach Wilson's mouth. Here's Garrett Wilson after the game. This ish, he didn't say ish, is not okay. Straight up, it is not okay. How many total yards do we have? That ish is not going to fly. We got the dude.
Is he ish? Or is
No,
he
I just said he did.
bombs?
I just said he didn't say the ish. He said the actual.
What did Robert Saleh say? Dog-ish?
Yes. Can I continue with Garrett Wilson's words? Musso asking if Brinson dyed his beard. Garrett Wilson continues. It's time to be consistent. It's time to win the games we should win. I mean, he went on a tirade, and I'll read the last quote here. He goes, "I'm going to call it like it is. We got to be better, get better in the passing game. If we want to be where we want to be at. We know we can be there. That's the most frustrating part. We ain't got to be in games like this. They didn't even score an offense, and we lost the game." That's I feel like passive aggressively pointing at Zach Wilson, who said he wasn't responsible for any of that.
It's tough seed, man. Jets are currently the first team out, in the AFC. It feels like they are about to crater.
I think they're a crater. I think they're there.
They're currently cratering.
Robert Saleh said that he is not changing quarterbacks when asked about it after the game when he said the doggish words. So
I don't see how I don't think you can.
Why? What is this weird fascination with keeping people in jobs that they're not good at?
Didn't you just tell me you had to keep playing some young quarterback?
Justin Fields. He's not bad. He's good.
He's hurt.
What's the level of the severity of the injury?
Okay. My point being is that the Jets and the Giants have outplayed their respective preseason positions. They've outplayed their respective rosters. They're probably not going to end up being the Jets and the Giants are probably not beating the Super Bowl. You have to give Zach Wilson, as a second-year quarterback, the reps to see what you got. What are you playing for, a wild card loss?
This team hasn't been in the playoffs since 2010?
Well, you want an Andy Dalton trophy?
Well, I mean, unlike Deshaun Watson, the other one we were talking about.
Don't disparage Andy Dalton's name, because Zach Wilson's not taking the Jets to the playoffs, Brinson.
Does Mike White take him to play, give him a better chance, Breech?
I would at least find out. Mike White beat the Bengals last year. Here's the thing. You're a successful team, and if you're Robert Saleh, you have to sit down and you say, all right, we are 6-4. We have a legitimate shot at the playoffs based on where we stand. Is Zach Wilson good enough to get us there? And if he's not, does Mike White give us a better shot? If the answer to that question is yes, you got to think about playing him, because Zach Wilson did not look like the guy who was going to get a team to the playoffs.
Right.
Thank you, Musso. This is I've never dyed my beard. I never dyed my hair. It's all natural, baby. By the way, it's gonna be Joe Flacco, not Mike White.
Either way, I think unlike Deshaun Watson, which is the other quarterback we mentioned earlier, who I think you should play because he needs the reps, Zach Wilson has proven that he is not very good.
Deshaun Watson needs your reps.
We were talking about the Browns earlier. You said whether he should just sit out the rest of the season as a 3-7 team.
Yeah, but I mean, he's okay. Anyway, let's not get bogged down. Let's move on. This game. Let's move on. All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, the Lions, are they a playoff team? We'll discuss next. So the Fighting Dan Campbells. We talk about New York, the Jets, and their loss. The Giants got smoked by the Lions. The Giants now 7-3. The Lions 4-6. Not entirely sure how the Lions pulled this magic off outside of Jamal Williams rushing for 3 touchdowns and Saquon Barkley being completely nullified and Danny Dimes making huge mistakes. But now, if you look at the standings, my. San Francisco, a 5-4 wildcard team, and the Lions creeping there at 4-6. Are the Lions good?
I think what we learned about, I mean, they won 3 in a row, which is awesome. I love that Dan Campbell's winning games because I said, I don't know if he's a good coach or not, but he feels like a guy that guys would run through walls for, and that appears to be happening. They've drafted well. Penei Sewell a couple years ago. That offensive line is really good. Jared Goff has exceeded everyone's expectations. Ironically, he is totally outballing Matthew Stafford, who, yes, I know is injured. Yes, they won a Super Bowl. It was totally worth it. But just in terms of which quarterback is playing better in their respective previous homes, I think right now it's Jared Goff. Brinson disagrees because he's a Matt Stafford stan.
It's unnecessary slander of a reigning world champion
and future Hall of Famer. Yep, beat you to it, so it doesn't count. Aiden Hutchinson had an interception and a sack again today. And let me find a fun fact for you, Breech. And
I got a fun fact.
I was wrong about Aiden Hutchinson, by the way. He's just good. Despite his tiny little T-Rex arm.
I got a fun fact that I was going to bring up, and someone in the comment section actually asked about it, so it's even more fitting. They wanted to know when was the last time the Lions had a 3-game winning streak.
2017. Everyone knows the answer.
What weeks?
You didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. No, you don't know the answer.
7, 8, and 9.
Wrong. 9, 10, and 11. Get out of here, Brinson. Get out of here.
I will say, like, Brinson lies probably 95% of the words leave his mouth.
They said it on the broadcast all
the certainty with which he said 7, 8, 9 was such that you almost believed it.
But it has been 5 years since the Lions have won 3 straight games. And look,
check this.
It is crazy that the Lions, they look better every week. They went from finding ways to lose games that we saw earlier in the season. And now they're winning these close games that they did the last 2 weeks. And then they dominate a game like they did against the Giants. And you look at the rest of this team's second place in the NFC North. How did that happen? They were last place. Everyone thought they were done, put a fork in them. And now this team is
I didn't.
And the Vikings are like kind of it's so crazy how this league is. We know this. We say this every year, but it's like the NFL is so week to week. It's nuts. Like right now, you're like, are the Vikings a fraud?
Well, they didn't show up, but we'll see.
I don't see, like the Lions. Like I want the Lions to make the playoffs. I want them to make the playoffs.
So the only rookie with multiple sacks and interceptions this season, Brinson's boy Aiden Hutchinson. Kirby Joseph, who was I think a 3rd-round pick, played safety, had an interception today, had interceptions last week as well. And Breech, to your point, this is exactly what I wrote down when I was watching this game. Typically, when the Lions get up and it's the 4th quarter, the wheels just fall off and they blow huge leads. The Lions looked like they were going to let New York back in, and then Isaiah Hodgins, who they got off the Bills practice squad, I believe, for wide receiver, fumbled in the 4th quarter. It was 24-12. The Giants weren't able to score, which would have made it 24, possibly to 20. And if they got to 24-20, I felt like the Giants probably going to come back. Instead, my man DeAndre Swift went on to score along with Jamal Williams, as you mentioned. Brinson had a fantastic day, and I felt like they turned a corner and being able to hold off teams in the 4th quarter, which they had never done. It felt like in the last 2 years.
It's also like these sort of wins where you win these 3 games, and the Lions haven't done it since 2017. You're doing it in the middle to late part of the season. It's like a recency bias narrative perspective, but it changes so dramatically how the front office and ownership feels about what direction the team is moving in. And like we're guilty of it too, but like you feel like the Lions are going in a positive direction. Whereas like 3 weeks ago, we're like, Dan Campbell might get fired mid-season. I mean, these wins are huge for Dan Campbell and that, everyone in that front office, everyone in that coaching staff that wants to try to, not get fired this offseason.
Billy mentioned this earlier when we were talking about Kenny Pickett. He said Kenny Pickett's closer to Daniel Jones than Joe Burrow. What are we doing with Daniel Jones after this season?
Well, with the Daniel Jones or Jared Goff?
Daniel Jones.
Well, I feel like this is the game where Brian Daboll said, yeah, maybe it might be not for the best that we keep him. Because, look, I think the one thing you found out about the Giants was what's going to happen if Saquon Barkley gets shut down, if we can't run the ball and we have to depend on Daniel Jones to win. And Danny Dimes looks like Danny Dimes from last year when he's fumbling and throwing interceptions.
Danny Pennies.
Danny Pennies. He threw 2 interceptions, neither of which were good. And those were costly. And he hadn't thrown an interception since week 3. But the Giants, you're trailing. You need your quarterback. And
let me ask you this, Breech. What are the odds?
4%.
The starter on December 4th at the Commanders, where the Giants are 7-4, have lost 2 in a row. If they lose to the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, that the starter for the Giants is Tyrod Taylor.
I don't think they would turn that. I think they'd stick with Daniel Jones.
So
I think he's been good enough this season, and you're not going to make a decision based on one game. If he goes out there and throws 3 interceptions against the Cowboys on Thursday on Thanksgiving with the 30 million people watching, then maybe.
That's what I'm saying. Don't forget who's Brian Daboll's guy, Sean McDermott. What did he do? Bench Tyrod Taylor for Nathaniel Hackett. Oh,
Nathaniel Peterman. It would have been awesome if it was
Nathan Peterman and Nathaniel Hackett. My God. I'd rather have Nathan Peterman than Nathaniel Hackett. All right,
Daniel Jones isn't getting benched. You're riding with him the whole entire season. And at the end of the year, you decide, all right, do we want to franchise tag him? Are we trying to get a 2-year deal done or what we're trying to or move on? But you're giving him this whole year, especially since you're doing so well and you're 7-3.
What kind of odds will you give me that on Daniel Jones being benched this season without being hurt?
With no injury?
Yeah.
And he's not a starter. If he gets benched in like the 4th quarter,
he's benched before the game.
Right. So that there's a different starter.
No, they're like, we've decided we're going to go with Tyrod Taylor this week.
It's not going to
happen. What odds will you give me? 5-1?
10-1.
$1,000,000 to 1.
But you can only bet $3.
All right, $3. I'll take $3 at $1,000,000 to 1 and $3 at 10-1.
Yeah.
Moving along.
Wait. One more thing.
You're out.
He's coming up with crazy hypotheticals. I'm trying to say something that actually pertains to the real world.
cannot wait. I cannot wait for 2 weeks when you owe me $3 million.
I can't either. I have it. I'll mail it to you right now. Don't worry about it. I'll assume you win. So they traded Kadarius Toney because that wasn't working out. Wan'Dale Robinson might have a serious knee injury. He left the game. So that's a concern. You talk about Daniel Jones. I don't think he gets benched, but if he has no one to throw the ball to and he already didn't have anyone to throw the ball to, being without Wan'Dale Robinson is a concerningly 1 catch for 4 yards. Or 1 rush for 4 yards, 9 catches for 100 yards before he left. So that's also something to keep an eyeball on. All right, what's next?
Next up, the Cowboys. Absolutely humiliated.
Slaughtered.
This is probably, unless I'm forgetting something, this is the most embarrassing L of the season. And I feel bad too because
what do you feel bad? I can't wait to hear this.
Friend of the pod, Kyle Brandt. Love Kyle Brandt. Did an awesome Kirk Cousins dad skit on NFL on CBS, the NFL Today, before this game. And then Kirk Cousins got treated like he was Dak Prescott's son.
Kyle Brandt's a friend of the pod?
Kyle Brandt's been on the pod, of course.
Do you like him more or less than Kay Adams?
Way more.
All right. Just checking.
I love Kyle Brandt. Kyle Brandt's my dude, man.
So let me.
I ain't gonna lie, I'm getting cooked.
I love Kyle Brandt.
Let me
40-3. 40-3.
Let me mention this.
40-3.
That's right. It was a whooping. Jordan DeJohnny, our buddy at CBS Sports, tweeted this out about this 40-3 win that you just mentioned there, Breech. The largest road win in Cowboys franchise history. This is funny. Breech, I hope you know the answer to this. The second largest home loss in Vikings franchise history. The third largest loss in NFL history by a team that entered the game 8-1 or better. Like, I'm actually curious about the second largest home loss and the third largest loss for the team with that record. But it certainly checks out that this will be the largest road win for the Cowboys. I have another fact about that, but you guys can talk first, and I'll circle back.
I mean, this was just a butt kicking. The Cowboys went in there, and
that's no words.
There's
really no words.
A slaughter town. It was an absolute, like, Kirk Cousins at one point had 7 completed passes and had been sacked 5 times.
Well, the crazy thing is, by the time the third quarter rolled around and the Cowboys were already up like 30-3 or whatever it was, the only thing I couldn't get out of my head was, how is Tony Pollard not on the field all the time for this team? What has been going on for the last couple of years? Who's in charge in Dallas? Put Tony Pollard in the freaking game.
Tony Pollard, is there a chance that Tony Pollard's the best running back in football?
Well, he's number one.
It's not that out of control.
He's number one in yards after contact in the NFL.
He's so explosive.
He had a 30-yard touchdown reception. He had a 68-yard touchdown reception. On both those receptions, he was touched exactly 0 times by defenders, not to mention him running the football. So there's a great case to be made. And, of course, Zeke pulled the old school Zach Crockett where he came into the 1-yard line and got 2 touchdowns. And Tony Pollard, I don't think, had any rushing touchdowns. So, just snaking those for his workout bonuses. But or performance bonuses, excuse me. Yeah, Tony Pollard's a great football player.
Hey, would you rather have
Tony Pollard or Kenny Pickett? Yes, Tony Pollard.
No. Tony Pollard and Jalen Ramsey, or Zeke Elliott and whoever the hell else the next quarterback that was drafted after Tony Pollard is?
Oh, well, obviously.
I mean, the Cowboys literally passed on Jalen Ramsey to take Zeke Elliott and then took Tony Pollard. You could have Tony Pollard and Jalen Ramsey on your team, and you would dominate. But Jerry Jones is not great at his job.
All right. Well, let's that's fine. I'm not going to screw with that. But let me ask you this. So what Cowboys team are we looking at? Are we looking at the Cowboys team that just de-pants the Vikings, or the Cowboys team that couldn't beat a terrible Packers team last week?
They were up bigger than the Packers. So I think the Cowboys are – so the Cowboys – so here's where I put the Cowboys. I put them in they're good, but I can't trust them pool. Because I don't trust I don't trust him. I can't trust Mike McCarthy. And you cannot trust this team and Mike McCarthy to win a massive game in the playoffs. But the NFC is so wide open. Like, like I said, if it was Cowboys, Patriots, if I told you right now it's Cowboys, Patriots in the Super Bowl, it's not impossible.
I think the Patriots part might be impossible. The Cowboys part, I could lean in on.
Well, I mean, aren't the Patriots? Dallas is the 5 seed, New England's the 6 seed.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think anyone would argue.
It's Bill Belichick and your homeboy McCorkle
and Matt Patricia. Don't forget him.
That's fair.
So someone in the comments applauded us for actually talking about the winning team first. So kudos to us for that. Kellen Moore also should get a lot of credit, and Dan Quinn should also get a lot of credit. So maybe they should say, hey, we're going to give you the Jeff Saturday treatment, Mike McCarthy. We're going to turn your headset off. We're going to give you these pom-poms and just sit over there and look like you're doing stuff.
Actually, you know what that's called? That's called the Jason Garrett treatment.
Right. Just sit there and clap.
Just clap and act like that was your whole bit. You always pointed out, you never see Jason Garrett talking to his headset.
No. They're playing like elevator music in that thing, and he's just sort of humming along inside his brain. Oddly enough, we were paying him out to be an idiot. He went to Princeton. He was at one point the hot OC that turned down the Ravens. Just like Kyle Brandt, actually. Turned down the Ravens job, yes. But here's the thing that I wanted to mention. Breech, do you have anything about the Cowboys? I want to say something about the Vikings.
Just their defense was probably as good as their offense.
7 sacks. Micah Parsons left with like a knee. I don't know what's going on with that.
I think he's fine. He'll be on the field Thursday.
He is a monster.
The one thing I will say about the Cowboys, though, real quick,
and
since we were talking about turning off Mike McCarthy's headset, was that why is Dak Prescott still in this game in the fourth quarter when you have to turn around and play on Thanksgiving and you only have a 3-day rest. Once it was 30-3 and I know I have to play on Thanksgiving, I'm benching everyone. Go home, guys. You don't have to stay at the stadium. I don't care. Go get in the ice bath. We got to play on Thursday. So I was a little
have him leave, but and he just came back from a massive thumb injury. We had to play Cooper Rush. Hey, here's an idea: get him off the field, put him on a private jet, fly him to Dallas, and let him kick it until you have to worry about Thanksgiving. I agree completely.
So that was the only bad decision the Cowboys made. Everything else was A+.
Yeah. For the Vikings, this is something I talked about this on HQ on Friday. Last year, do you know what their record was in one-score games? They played 14 one-score games. What do you think their record was?
I actually know the answer to this.
Breech, what do you think?
6-8.
Again.
Brinson
Breech, what do you think the answer is, Breech? Brinson answers. And the point differential last year was -1 over the course of the entire season. Coming into this game, they had won 7 straight games by 1 possession in a row. Do you know what their point differential was coming into this game?
Going into the game or after the game?
Going into the game.
No.
You need an answer or no?
Plus 20?
Plus 35.
Yeah, so Brinson pulled a Breech, looked it up. It is plus 35.
I didn't look it up. I knew the answer. Oh, my God.
So now their point differential is worse than it was last year on a team that won 8-9, -2. And my question that I'm getting to is this team just luckier than last year's team? Are they that much better?
I will give you
one flip games. That's what happens. So
Right.
It's like you're going to lose. You're not going to win every single one of those. The law of averages works against you. There's just so many fluky things that can happen in the NFL. And
last year they were average, though. They were 8-9. This year they're now 8-2. That's my point. Are they that much better this year than last year?
I think they're better. They're absolutely better. I don't think they're 10 times better. I think their coaching's better. I think the offense looks better with Kevin O'Connell running it. So there are things that are absolutely better.
I agree with those things. But in terms of the overall product, I think they've gotten a lot luckier this year than last year. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely.
what can anyone guess what the total point differential for the NFC South is?
Is it all negative?
11 weeks. They are all negative.
I'm going to guess.
Before you answer, if you guess it correctly, I will let you off your $3 $1 million to one or $1 million to one bet.
Well, I just mailed you the check, so I can't do anything about that. I'm going to conservatively guess -500.
And I will go with the famous Brinson guest of -69.
-108 for 14.
Jesus, I was kidding with the 500. I can't believe that.
I mean, -108 the entire.
Wasn't that far off.
Like, oh my God, the NFC is a mess in these streets. The Buccaneers in the NFC South are the only team with a positive point differential. They're +3. Ugly. All right,
Brinson, answer this question real quick, and then you can move on. Brian J says the Vikings are a one-score game, and one-score games, and it's luck. KC does it, and they're worshipped. What's your response?
That's ridiculous. No. What?
Well, Kansas City's been to Super Bowls, so there is a little difference when you have a little more trust in your quarterback. There's definitely a difference.
Dang,
how many one-score games are you talking about? No. The Vikings played 17 games last year, and 14 of them were one-score games, and you went 6-8. And this year they're 7-1 now. If you were playing, so they played 27 games, and 22 of them have been one-score games. You were basically just playing blackjack. But that's all you're doing. You're playing roulette at this point with an NFL game. You cannot sustainably win games by like squeaking out one-score wins all the time. It won't happen over the long haul. If you want to be a good team, we like the Vikings. We think they're a good team. They're going to the postseason. If they draw if the Vikings and the Bucks play in the wild card round, adios amigo, Kirk.
The good news is, though, if you're a Vikings fan, Brinson told us last week that you'll be happy just getting to the playoffs. So there's nothing to worry about. All right, next game.
Wait, real quick, I got to bring up Brett Maher. And
well done.
Back-to-back 60-yarders.
End of the first half of the entire regular season when we had him kick a 60-yard field goal, and the refs magically decide, as Ryan loves to say, that somebody in New York was drinking pina coladas, realize they need to review the play. So they buzz in like after his kick already went from 60 freaking yards. The guy makes a 60-yard field goal, Then they go review it. The play stands, and they make him kick it over. You cannot make a guy try a 60-yard field goal. There have only been 2 field goals this entire season of over 60 yards before this week. So you're asking this guy to make 2 in a row. That is literally like asking Brinson to make 2 hole-in-ones in a row. 60-yard field goals are improbable. They are difficult. So the fact that they made him do
and the
it,
second one was better than the first one.
and the second one was better than the first one, which makes sense because for some reason, this guy is the best 60-plus yard field goal in NFL history. He has never missed. He has made 4 in his career, which is the NFL record. He is 4 of 4, so he is 100% from over 60 yards, which is bonkers. And no other kicker in NFL history has made more than 2 60-yard field goals. So he's made twice as many as any other kicker ever. It makes no sense at all. Congratulations to Brett Maher, though, because he scored me 22 fantasy points.
But you know what? He wasn't even the highest scoring fantasy kicker this week. Tyler Bass scored 24.
What?
So here's the thing, Breech.
You know that.
I have a little, I'm going to put this nugget. Hopefully Mike McCarthy's listening to this podcast. So Mike McCarthy, here's what I would do if I were you. If Brett Maher, I don't know where Brett Maher isn't the most accurate from. Let's say it's from 30 to 39 for some reason. Just take a bunch of delay game penalties, move back to the 60 and smoke it. There you go.
Hey, well, they had a kick like that. He tried a 59-yarder a year or 2 ago, and it was like, why wouldn't the holder just back up a yard and just go to 60? It's all in the head. It's all.
By the way, did you, this is sort of apropos of this, but did you see the Mavericks basketball game earlier tonight? Where Luka Doncic.
I was watching football, Brinson, come on.
Okay.
Watching basketball.
I mean, Luka Doncic steps back and hits this crazy rainbow 3 before halftime. And everyone goes nuts. It's crazy. They're losing their minds. They go to the locker rooms. They come back out. It was like 2 seconds left. They come back out and they were like, actually, we reviewed the shot and his heel hit the line. So we're adding 2 seconds on to the second quarter. You guys have to play the 2 seconds of the second quarter right now before we start the third quarter. And so they inbounds it, and this like random, because you have to inbounds with the same people on the court. This random dude chunks up a 75-foot heave and swishes it. So it's a literal 6-point swing over in a review. It was just like the Mayer thing Maher thing, because they completed the pass to Lamb. He kicked it, and then after the kick went in, they were like, unfortunately, we do have to review that now. So you have to go back and kick it again.
And real quick, Brett Maher is 57.8% on field goals between 50 and 59 yards. So barely hits half of those. You move that thing back to 60, he doesn't miss. It is literally crazy. Okay.
Saints beat the Rams. Breech. Give me the quick one on Andy Dalton.
Andrew Gregory
It's
Dalton.
1 p.m. Nobody cares. Nobody likes his team. Let's move on.
Okay, I'll just say real quick. Look, Dennis Allen stuck by him, and he made Allen's gamble pay off, and he went out there, had the game of his life. I can't remember, but it was 1 p.m. We know Daytime Dalton. Daytime Dalton showed up, 260 yards, 3 touchdown passes, completed 84% of his passes. He was on fire. He looked awesome. The Rams did not look awesome. You know, Cooper Kupp didn't play. Matthew Stafford went in the concussion protocol, even though I don't think he's there anymore. Rams season is over. The Saints are still kind of alive because they're in the NFC South.
He left with the rest of the Rams when they left the Mercedes-Benz Dome.
Hot take. They should shut down Matthew Stafford for the season. And anyone of me shut down Aaron Donald, Matthew Stafford, anyone of meaningfulness.
Look at paying these guys $40 million a year and just tell them to take the rest of the season.
Shut them down, come back for 2023. It's over. It's over.
And your fun fact is that the Rams are 3-7, which is tied for the worst start ever by a reigning Super Bowl champion.
Is it worth it though, Breech? Would you want to be 3-7 right now as the Bengals if you won the Super Bowl?
I can't ever answer that because I don't know what it's like.
In a heartbeat.
Yeah, it's
Carolina played Baltimore. No one should care about this game. 13-3, Ravens win. I mean, Lamar was not great, but you know what? He was up against Baker Mayfield and the dog bleep Panthers offense.
The first score came as seconds expired in the first half with a Justin Tucker field goal. The first touchdown came in the fourth quarter. The only thing noteworthy is that Ronald Stanley left with an ankle injury in the third quarter.
This game was battling Jets Patriots to see who would go the longest without scoring a touchdown.
The Panthers were the last team to score in week 11. It was like like 4. It was like 3:30.
You keep talking about all these
Everyone
players.
scored for the Panthers.
You keep talking about all these players that should shut it down. The Panthers should shut down the whole thing. Like every one of them
I agree.
should take the rest of the season off.
Send it to Raleigh. Send it to
Forfeit the rest of the game.
Yeah,
All right, what's
pull it
next?
off. Finally, Raiders over the Broncos. Speaking of shutting it down, if you're the Broncos and you trade multiple first-round picks for Russell Wilson and you lose to the Josh McDaniels and the Raiders twice, maybe shut it down. Also, Antonio Brown tweeted out that he was betting $10,000 on Derek Carr and then posted a fat picture of Derek Carr. And
What's a fat picture of Derek Carr? What does that mean? Is he fat?
It's a Photoshop fat picture of Derek Carr. And Derek Carr quote tweeted and said, we're eating good tonight, baby.
So Nathaniel Hackett hired Jerry Roswell to.
It's ridiculous. I just saw that.
You never see it so good. Put this thing up if you can, Billy.
So while you're doing that, Billy, Nathaniel Hackett hired. All right.
I'm done. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm just waiting for you to interrupt again, and then I'll have to wait again. So Nathaniel Hackett hired Jerry
Like I was
Rosberg.
saying.
I mean, it's your podcast. You can do what you want. Oh my gosh. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see fat face Derek Carr. Yeah, I don't know what Antonio Brown does during his Sundays. I would guess it's similar to what Brinson does in terms of
What is wrong
watch.
with it? What is wrong with Antonio Brown? He's just like, go ahead. Sorry, Wilson. Let's wrap this up.
More
All right, I love that Derek Carr is we got you. That's it. That's what ended our friendship. I love it.
No, I'm fine with this. It's just, I get it. Derek Carr's got a fat face. That's
not really him.
I have a soft spot for people with receding hairlines. So again, time number 4. I'll try it again. Nathaniel Hackett hired Jerry Rosberg earlier this season to help with the close plays on 4th down and time management and all that stuff. And he's been sitting in the booth for weeks now. He gave up play calling duty before this game, gave it to Clint Kubiak. And unlike Josh McDaniel, who's not going to go anywhere, and unlike Josh McDaniel in that the team, Devontae Adams and Derek Carr in particular, appear to be behind him, and there's some issues about the locker room with the players. And Mark Davis has his support, even though, as Breech notes every week, he spends more time in the principal's office than any coach in NFL history. McDaniels is staying put. Nathaniel Hackett got hired before the Walmart folks came in, the Waltons. This team is an absolute and utter disaster. Russ Wilson said something at the end of the game, at the post-game press conference, about he knew it was going to be a journey coming to Denver. That's BS. He thought they were going to be winning playoff games and going to Super Bowls from day one. So you can say all the sort of weird.
Well, Ryan, in his defense, there's certainly no one that we know that would have picked the Broncos to win the Super Bowl. Let's go there.
You have to be a real idiot to do that.
I mean, a total moron.
So, Breech, you can answer both questions. What kind of moron would pick the Broncos? And number 2, how long does Nathaniel Hackett have before he joins us on this podcast?
Well, you know what? This was one of the Broncos' better offensive performances of the season. If
How
their
many points they
defense
score?
16, that's pretty good for Denver.
And one more question. How many touchdowns did Russ Wilson throw?
Yes, I picked the Broncos to win the Super Bowl. That wasn't your question.
Look at Breech's hair. Look at Breech's hair right now. You look
got
like
a
juice.
He threw 0 touchdown passes, Ryan. Is that what you wanted me to say?
All right, continue. Go ahead. I won't interrupt.
They lost because their total defensive meltdown in the final 2 possessions. You were holding Derek Carr to like 200 yards. You let Devontae Adams, the best receiver on the team, get wide open for a 35-yard touchdown in overtime. Are you kidding me? What is wrong with everybody? So this was
was Patrick Surtain too. But here's what I'll say to that. You're right that the defense didn't show up, but the defense has showed up for the first 10 weeks and allowed 8 points a game or whatever. At some point, the offense has to do more than score 16 points, and your star quarterback has to throw more than 0 touchdowns.
Yes, there is whatever. Somebody tweeted out that if the Broncos just scored 18 points per game, scored 18 points in every game, they would be 9-1 right now.
Well, yes, that means they're Matt Rule's Panthers. Like, congratulations.
Yeah, I don't know that.
So
bad.
you didn't answer the original question. What's Nathaniel Hackett's future look like?
I think if you're the Waltons and you're worth $65 billion, that you are calling Sean Payton and you're saying, look, we have this checkbook here. It's blank. You write as many zeros and whatever numbers you want, and it will cash because it's Uncle Sam's money, literally Uncle Sam Walton. So yes, it will absolutely cash and get here now. So that's what I'm doing. And Nathaniel Hackett, he gave the old college try, but it just
that is a fascinating scenario where the Saints and the Broncos are fighting it out to get Sean Payton, and Sean Payton's like, "Fine, I will take $14 million a week to coach your football team."
He's not coaching the Broncos.
He might make $25 million a year next year.
everybody's got a price, Ryan.
He doesn't want to deal with Russ Wilson. I have no.
You don't think he'd coach him for $30 million?
No,
per year?
I wouldn't coach him for $30 million. I would. Coach him.
All right, that's it. That's the show. Winners and losers, real quick. 30 seconds max around the horn. I'll say a loser is Nathaniel Hackett.
Go ahead, Wilson.
My loser is Joe Burrow for not scoring more points. Go ahead.
Ridiculous. Mine is Zach Wilson for throwing everyone but him under the bus. Not
Fair
my
enough.
fault.
Winners, go ahead.
My winner is Dan PC Principal Campbell.
Man
3
Campbell.
wins. Man
Breech.
Campbell. Let's go, baby.
My winner is Joe Burrow to cancel out Ryan's loser.
Oh, I said that so I could say that Mahar is my winner. Gotcha, sucker. Fell for it.
All right. That'll do it for us. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. For Breech, for Wilson, I'm Brinson. We'll see
Go
you guys
USA.
later.